welcome back to another episode of the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro, Evan Paris. Got a guest with us on the line. Before we get to her, though, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Hyperwear. Hyperwear makes weighted vests. They make weighted sandbags. They do all sorts of weighted products, weighted ropes. I think they have like a weighted jump rope. A lot of great stuff on their website, hyperwear.com. You can head over and check it out. I've also got 2 reviews that should be out by the time this podcast publishes on the OCR report, talking about their weight vests. Specifically, they've got these adjustable weight plates, so you can actually like put a plate into like a normal plate carrier like you use for the military or shooting, and you can actually adjust the weights. So really cool product. And then they've also got ones that's like specifically for hyperwear. So they have ones that fit in like a standard plate carrier, and they have ones that are specifically for their vest. So I got a couple reviews coming out for that, including like a review on using them on different weight or plate carrier vests. So for those of you who are interested in tactical games, especially check them out. Or if you're doing Memorial Day Murph, you're going to want to check out Hyperwear. All right, let's get to today's guest. I'm joined by Cindy Herbert. Cindy, say hi.
Hello.
Yeah. So excited to have her on. She is a Phoenix Race. She's on the Phoenix Race Pro team and recently run Mythic Race, first female in the 5K category.
Yeah, it was
Go for it.
Great race.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking a lot about, we'll talk a little bit about Phoenix, but we'll also talk a lot about some of the other events you've done, and specifically with a focus on Mythic Race. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, not the whole thing, just to kind of touch on some high points. So wife and mother of 3 young children, 9, 8, and 5, which I'm sure keeps you very busy. And also has
It
some
sure does.
hobbies include cooking and baking and crafts, and started running in her 20s. Did her first Spartan race in 2018 and fell in love with it and got into some Ninja Warrior training in 2019. Got a trifecta in 2021 with a podium at each event in her age group, which is impressive because that's back-to-back races. And then also has podium finishes at Music City Trail Ultra 12K, Music City Dairy Dash 15K. That's a good one. Yeah. That's clever. Modus Knoxville Trail Half Marathon, Blue Crab Bolt 10K, Swinging Bridge 10K. Phoenix Race OCR got first in that one, and then Deca Fit Elite 4th place. Also done Go Ruck Tuscaloosa Gauntlet 1st place, and then Mythic Race 1st place. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's
been
start
trying
off.
To get in all the races I can.
Yeah, it's good. You know, you come from it looks like you come from a running background and then got into OCR, so that's it's always a good base to jump off from because most of OCR is in fact running, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So you could say my background is running, but I never ran track in school or anything like that. Like I was just kind of living life being like, I got to do something active here. So let's just go run. And then it has
Nice.
Just progressed over the years into getting into racing and competitions and stuff like that.
No, that makes sense. A lot of the people I knew who ran in high school and college get burnt out by it. And, you know, when they become an adult with like a real job and kids and stuff, they're like, no, I don't do running anymore.
Forget running. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other problem is they're used to being high school age and weight where like they're just like a stick. And it's like, all right, well now I have an extra like 20, 30 pounds of muscle or fat or a mix of both, and you can't hit those same times because you can do other things like pull-ups, right? Which high school runners cannot do. So.
Yeah, it's actually been really kind of great in that way, being late to running because I can still I'm still hitting PRs and getting faster even though I'm 40. So
nice.
It really keeps things exciting and rewarding. It keeps me coming back for more.
So tell me about, let's start off with tell me about your entry into the sport of obstacle course racing. You said a friend invited you for your first Spartan race. Kind of tell me about that and how that led into Ninja Warrior training.
Yeah. So, like you said, a friend of mine, just her and her husband were going to do the Nashville Spartan race in 2018. So a couple months before that, she was like, how about you and your husband come with and do it with us? And I had never heard of Spartan before. I like had to Google what it was and how to train for it. And they had, I don't know if they still have training programs on their website, but they did at the time. And I just kind of started adding that stuff into my running. So it was like doing burpees and crab walks, and I don't even remember all the stuff, but it added in another element that I, even from just that first little bit of training, found really interesting and like different from what I was doing. So it just kind of grabbed my attention that way. And so we went to the race, and it wasn't like it certainly wasn't like I didn't have like a great race. I was new to it and just kind of trying it out, but I was able to do all of the obstacles minus the spear throw, which I know gives a lot of people trouble. But I was able to get through some stuff that I really even kind of surprised myself I was able to do. And I just loved that feeling of being able to like push through things and do things that I didn't even know I could do. And, I got to the finish line and I was like, oh my gosh, this was so much fun. And it was hard, but it like gave me this great feeling. And I knew from that moment that I wanted to do more.
So what advice would you have for someone? 'Cause I'm guessing that was right after your youngest was born.
It was, yeah. So I think he was 1 at the time.
So what advice would you have for either, new moms or, someone in their late 30s that's interested in getting in the sport, doesn't maybe know if they should. Most of our listeners involved obviously are in the sport, but
yeah, sure.
I think sometimes we have to convince other people, like our friends or our spouse or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what angle would you use it?
have run into people that I'm trying to convince. First of all, just go for it. Like, even if you can't do an obstacle or are having trouble with certain things, like just go for it and try it. Like, there's so much to be gained from it. Even if you don't, I've of course gone like way off into the competitive side of things, but even if you don't and you're just doing it for fun, like there's so much community, and there's just so much good that can come from it. And don't, I think people, from what I have experienced, people worry very much about like, are they training right? Are they training enough? Can they do this? And like, even if you just go out there and walk it and try the obstacles, like you will have so much fun and you will meet people that are right there with you. And you don't have to be an expert at everything to go out there.
Most people are not doing every obstacle on every course. Like if you can do every obstacle on a course, you are the exception, not the rule.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
When you run in the elite wave, it's different, right? Like the majority of people are doing like almost all the obstacles, but that's different.
It is a very small percentage of people that are running the elite wave.
Right. I mean, we're talking, that's probably 5, maybe 10%, depending on the race.
Yeah, agreed.
But I mean, so I worked for Tough Mudder for 2 years. We're doing their charity event, their Infinite Hero Honor Challenge. And at one point I was waiting. It was like kind of like a land nav thing where they're bouncing around the course. So I'm waiting at a slant wall, which I would consider one of like the most basic obstacles, right? It's just a wall slanted towards you. Yeah. And I'm waiting there for the group to arrive. And I'm watching a third of the people go across it. A third of the people kind of struggle over it or kind of doubt themselves and then get help. And then a third of the people like, I can't do this. And they go around. And I was like, oh, that's a slant wall. Like, to the elites, we won't even talk about it. It wouldn't be like, did you see the slant wall? It would be like, was there a slant wall? I don't even remember.
I don't even remember. So, that's true.
So tell me about, you've done the Spartan Trifecta, and you did Phoenix Race. So tell me a little bit about Phoenix Race and kind of how you ended up on their pro team.
Yeah, so when s- that Spartan trifecta was kind of like it was pretty early on in my OCR days, considering what I've done. So and I loved it, and I loved the challenge of doing the different distances, and like the longer distances has some different obstacles that are more challenging. But I also, as much as I would have liked to travel around and go to all these different Spartan races, it wasn't really in my reality. Like I couldn't afford it, for one, to travel that much, and to travel or to pay for the races, honestly. So I just started looking for local obstacle course races that were within driving distance from us. I mean, within like 4 or 5 hours.
Where do you live for our listeners?
I'm in the Nashville, Tennessee area,
Okay.
Franklin, Tennessee specifically. It's just south of Nashville.
Yeah, I used to live up in
Um,
Clarksville for
oh yeah,
about
not too
7 years
far
of my
away.
life. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Um, so well, to get into a little bit about the last little bit of my life, we did move around some. So, um, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, when I did that first Spartan, and for several years after. And then we were actually in Oklahoma for a year during COVID. And but there was some races going on, and there was so um was introduced to Battle of the Lions. Are you familiar with Battle of the Lions?
I am. I'm very familiar. I used to be, Mudgear Hannibal Pro Team used to be called Mudgear Battle of the Lions Pro Team. So
Okay,
I'm
okay. I
very
did not know
familiar with
that. I
them.
didn't realize that. Okay.
No worries, no
Um,
worries.
so
That's our third
I,
name change in 3 years. So
oh, so hard to keep up.
yeah,
Yeah, so they had their, I don't know if they're still doing races, but
they are not.
their races were all like in that sort of, I don't know what that Midwestern,
Midwest, we'll
not
call it. Yeah,
mid,
we'll call it
okay, yeah, it
Midwest.
was like Kansas City had one, and Dallas and Oklahoma was one of the ones, and it was happening while I was there. So I did that one. Um, and their obstacles, I noticed, were more challenging. Um, and I was like, wow, this was so fun. I was not able to do all of those obstacles, but I was like, this is so different and fun. And I was like, I need to find more like local obstacles. So we did the Kansas City Timber Challenge
Hmm.
while we were in that area. So we were only there for a year. We moved to Nashville area, and I started looking for races around here, and found a few options. But Phoenix Race is mostly in the area. They have a couple of races that they do in Ohio, but they have Georgia, they have Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's a couple in Alabama, Mississippi. I think they run about 7 events through the year. Um, and so I went to their Chattanooga race at the end of, it was like last fall, and ended up winning that race. And it was, it was kind of a crazy time for me. So um, I actually ended up getting really sick after that race. And I was like, even while I was there, I was like, man, I can't believe I won this race. And then like I ended up with a fever later that day, and it was crazy. But I the people that run that race are just, they're just great, and they just sort of welcomed me with open arms, and invited me to some of the other races that they were having, um
Yeah,
and
Julie's
I
great. So she's the one of the owners.
Yeah, Julie and Jason.
Julie's also apparently working for Legendborn, which I had not realized. Who makes like every time you see a
All
race
the
jersey on
clothes,
anyone,
all the
it's
gear.
like
Yeah.
90% or probably more. It's a Legendborn jersey. So
Yeah. Um, so anyway, I just I love their races. Like I mean, they're local, so they're smaller. So you just kind of I feel like you get to know people a little bit better. And, but Jason does the rig, and it's like every rig is different and challenging. And, I just really like it.
yeah, well, you ended up in a decent place. So in the Midwest, so I'm west of Kansas City. In the Midwest, there's like no Spartan race. I think the closest Spartan race
Oh,
is 8 hours or something. I think there
oh
might be one
gosh,
at
man,
6.
you have to really travel for that.
So I ended up not doing a lot of Spartans. In Nashville, at least, you get a little bit of the local scene, but you also get some of the, there are a couple Spartans out
Yeah, there
in that
are a
direction.
couple there, and there is one that comes to the Nashville area in
Yeah.
the fall each year. So I always do that one. Um,
There
and I
are
think there's
some
one like
regions
in
of the,
Atlanta
yeah.
and some other close areas.
So like the West Coast doesn't really have a good local scene. It's just got like the major brands,
Oh
which
yeah,
I do not like.
yeah,
I like, yeah, to me, yeah, like Ohio is a really good place to be if you racing. The Northeast has got some good ones up there too, some local stuff in addition to
yeah.
all the big brands.
That's
So
true. Yeah, I have run across a few that I've
yeah, to
added to
me,
my list of things to do in the future.
you want to be someplace with a mix of both, or at least I'm a really big fan of locals. I think they're very unique and provide a different experience. And I like how there's essentially there's no like standards or rules for obstacles, so they can do whatever they want. So
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
sometimes you'll go to an event, and you're like, what is happening right now? So
Yeah, you
the
don't
one
really know what to expect.
the one I recommend for you that I haven't heard you mention is in St. Louis. It's called Hazelwood OCR. I talked about it on my last podcast with Jamie Ron.
Yes, I have heard of it. And it is on my list. I was close to going, or I thought about going to that. It just didn't work into my schedule this year, but I have heard that it is very unique.
Yeah, if you like Mythic Race, if you like Battle of the Lions, you'll like Massacre. I'm sorry, Hazelwood OCR. They've got two events under that title brand, Hazelwood OCR. They've got the Massacre and they've got the Shirinji. So the
Oh,
Massacre
okay.
happened already in mid-March, and the Shirinji's happening. I think it's September 23rd is the weekend is
Oh,
happening.
okay. I'll have to check my schedule for that one.
Yeah. All right, Mythic Race. We're going to talk about a little bit about that. Because you won, one of the prizes was you get to come on the podcast and you get to
Nice.
talk.
Yeah.
So, one, how did you find Mythic Race? Right, because they're a smaller brand, they don't advertise too much. So I feel like you kind of got to be in the know. How did you end up finding their
Oh
brand?
goodness. That is a great question that I'm not even sure I can answer. I okay, so a little bit about me. I do kind of get obsessive about things when I am excited about them.
Fair
So,
enough. You're in good company. You're in good company.
yeah. So I like at the end, I guess it was maybe at the end of last year, when I was thinking about like what are the races I want to do this year. I'm also like not super organized, so I don't have like a spreadsheet or anything. It's, I just have a list of handwritten things that I want to do. But I just kind of started like deep diving in local OCRs. And, I think that one just sort of came up, and I was
Gotcha.
like, oh, this isn't too far away. Like I can drive that in a day. So
Nice. I'd also
it just kind of
recommend,
got added to the list.
if you haven't downloaded it yet, the OCR Buddy, the app. Do you have that app
Oh
yet?
yes, I do.
Okay,
I
good.
do. And I do use it. Yes.
That's like my go-to for everything now. That's how I find everything. So,
Yeah, it's nice because like there's too many races on my list for me to do them all in a year, but it's nice because I can search by date. Like if I know I have a weekend free,
yeah.
I can be like, what is happening this weekend? Is it close enough for me to go? I love that.
Yeah. So tell me about a little bit about the course of Mythic Race. So there was a 5 hour option and there was a 5K option. I did
Yeah.
the 5 hour, so I'll throw some stuff in about that. But tell us about the 5K option and kind of some of the obstacles and some of your thoughts as you kind of sped through the course.
Yeah, so I did come out the night before. They had like packet pickup or like, packet pickup and you of course they had the course set up so you could see some of the stuff that was right in that entry area. Um I wanted to kind of get because I didn't really have any idea what the course was going to be like. Um and I did kind of want to get that in my mind of like, okay, what to expect. Um and of course it was like at a racetrack, right? Like what kind
Yeah,
of
like
racing do they do there? Like a car racing thing?
I think
Like,
they do like drag. They had a strip for drag racing that we ended up running down at one point, and then I
okay.
think they might
Oh,
do
that's right.
some
Yeah, like a paved,
motocross in
but
the
it
in the
was like
backside.
a dirt track, right? So
Yeah,
anyway, um, so it was very flat. Like there was,
very flat.
it was very flat. It was just kind of all around this track. So it was all just flat. But once we got into the course, I was like, oh, there's like all this sand. I was not expecting that. Which sand is like really hard to run on. I mean, it was short. It wasn't any big deal, but it was just kind of surprising to me that there was all this sand. Um, but um, I liked how they did utilize some of the natural stuff going on there with that. Um, there was some there was some heavy carry like farmers carry and sandbag carry like really early on. And then kind of the first um built obstacle I think was the low rig.
Yeah, yeah.
Um which I got through on the first time, but it was tough. Low rigs get in my head. I don't know like if that's true for a lot of people, but I just like, oh gosh, I'm tall. I'm 5'9", so I mean I'm not like crazy tall, but I'm kind of tall. So I think there's something that just like gets in my head like, oh my legs are gonna drag. I'm gonna have such a hard time with this. So
Yeah,
um
they're always awkward because sometimes it's best to go parallel to the ground, and other
yeah,
times it's best to like tuck into a ball and just go across it
yeah.
like a normal rig.
And it's
So
hard to know like
yeah,
what the best way is to do
so,
it.
so I actually think I got because I was doing the 5 hour and I had to do it multiple times. I think I was better on laps like two, three, four. I think I kept getting
After
better.
you've like kind of had some practice.
Yeah, the first time I felt really awkward because I tried to stay
Awkward, yeah.
parallel and then like halfway through I was like, this isn't going well. I
Yeah.
should change. So
Yeah. Well, because they had like the horizontal bars on the ends.
yeah,
And that's what I thought too was like, okay, keep my feet on there as long as you can. But then there was like too many
rigged holds. Yeah,
grips in the
yeah.
middle to stay that way. So it was like, I'm sure it was not pretty to watch me going across that, but I did manage to make it. And oh, and yeah, there was a couple of things because then we ran down the drag racing strip and there was the windpipe, what did they call it?
Wind
Wind chimes?
chimes. Yeah, they were vertical, like
Yes.
six vertical PVC pipes hanging.
Yes, which was surprisingly difficult because they're like whacking you in the shin while you're trying to get your leg onto the next one. And I like that. That was a good inventive obstacle. And there was stadium seating along around the track, and they used that for us to run up and down and up and down. And I don't even know how many times we ran up and down those um, bleachers. And I like that they used that. It just kind of added another element of difficulty.
So
Um,
if you have to do the wind chimes again, and for those of you who have to do a similar obstacle, generally the best bet is you want as much exposed skin as possible because that'll stick to the pipe as opposed to your
oh,
clothes, right? So like
yeah, I didn't even think
I
about
was
that.
wearing spandex pants and I actually rolled them up slightly to expose more of my thigh so it
Oh,
wouldn't rip.
nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did have shorts on that day. instead of like, full leggings or anything. And I didn't slide too much on it, probably because of that.
Yeah.
Um,
And then take us to I really like they used, again, using the terrain and the resources they had available. At one point they used actually like the crossbeam of a tall swing set for a rope
yeah,
climb and for a Tarzan swing. I thought that was really clever.
yes,
And
agreed. That
and
was great. I was kind of confused when I came back around because I was like, oh, are we doing a rope climb again? And he was like, no, you swing across.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, that was fun. Oh, and I loved the Z wall.
Yes,
Or
yeah.
did they call it that, the Z wall? Because it was like the first and the third section were like a traditional Z wall that you would think of at a Spartan, but the second piece was just a bar of multiple uh it was like different. I'm not explaining this well.
Yeah, so
What am I trying to say? It was different levels.
for if you're an obstacle course racer, it was skitch. The middle was skitch, force five
Oh, okay.
skitch. If you're not
Yes.
an obstacle course racer, the it was essentially you have two hooks in your hand, and the
Yes.
middle is just a bar going across. So you had to move.
Move across.
You had to
Yeah.
slide with. So your feet are not hanging on the middle section. You are traversing
Yeah.
with just your
You're
hands on the hooks.
just, yeah, it was just the upper body in the middle. There was no place for your feet. So it
Yeah.
just added an element of difficulty. Um, and I loved that.
That's not
Um,
the only like combo obstacle they had for our obstacle course racer. So they also had Lagaff into uh, Dragon's Back. That was the one with the poles that tilted,
yes.
and then
Yes. Love that.
you got up there and you jumped across Dragon's Back. Which again, it's funny when I was talking to people after the race, and they were like, "Oh, I got up there and I was just terrified."
I did have a moment of that. I had never done that obstacle before. I had done Lagaff before, but I've never had the, what did you call it?
Dragon's Back,
Dra-
yeah.
I had never done that before. And like watching it from the ground, you're like, oh, that's no big deal at all. And then you get up there and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so high up.
Yeah,
That looks so fun.
and realistically, if you take one, like you could make it across without even jumping. Like if you just take a
So
really
yeah,
large
you could
step,
drop down and you're fine.
you will make it. It's just people see the bar and they think they're gonna smash their face into it. They think they're gonna
Yeah.
fall down. It gets in your head. So
Yeah.
they've
Yeah. You
had
got to just go for it. Like I like hesitated and that was definitely a mistake.
they've had elites have walked off the course at World Championships because they thought it was too dangerous, which is
Oh,
crazy.
wow. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
so it gets in everyone's head if you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of obstacle course racing. They play on fears,
Yeah.
especially Tough Mudder's brand, which plays on the fear of like claustrophobia, electricity,
Oh,
water,
yeah.
water you can't see the bottom, heights. It plays on everything. So that's just part of the sport.
Yeah.
Talk
Which is
about the
which is
rig.
also like
Oh,
part
go
of
for it.
why I like it so much.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember one of the trifecta races that I did. It was a cold morning and I knew that I was gonna have to go in that dunk wall. And like I thought about that leading like for so long leading up to that race. I was like, I don't know if I can do it. I hate cold. Like I just, and cold water is like the worst. And having to just like jump in and go fully under, I was like, I don't think I can do it. But then I did it. And I was like, so proud of myself for just going for it.
you send it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a
So
little
sorry,
about
you were saying tell
the
us
big
about
rig.
something.
Yeah, the rig. And
Yeah. So there was like two. So yeah. So the main rig, it had, of course, I don't remember all the different holds, but it was like 12 different holds going across
yeah,
with the vertical and the bars and there was like probably like 8 leading up to a like a was it bars going
yeah.
across horizontal bars
Hmm.
and then you had to go under the bars and then continue going across like 4 or 5 more holds. And once again, I just feel like it was like a really imaginative way to do a rig, to have that stop in the middle and then have to go underneath. Um, it just
Yeah.
kind of like shook things up a little bit.
Yeah, so the holds were all from race ready obstacles. So for anyone who is looking to pick up some home grips, I would highly recommend them because that's what's used at
Absolutely.
OCR World Championships and brands like Mythic Race. But yeah, I really like the under too. I thought it was really unique because one, if you're not really good at rigs, it gave you a point to like rest on.
Yes,
Two,
true.
if you waited there too long hanging, you're actually going to make your arms more tired. So,
Yeah,
um, and it was kind of awkward going underneath. So,
it was. I mean, it was a challenge for sure.
yeah.
But then
And
they
then,
also had, is it called Canyon?
oh, they had Canyon.
Because
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Yep, from
so it was the
OCRWC.
rings. They did
So,
have it was all rings, but it goes, you start up high and then go down, and then you have to go back up. And then there was like ladders on each end
yeah, that
that
was a good one.
ended
My
up.
arms were pumped out I failed that on my last lap. I think it was
Oh
a,
yeah.
I had the
Only
penalty on
after
the
doing it like 4 times you couldn't get that last time. But I couldn't get it a second time. I did get it the first time, but it's surprisingly difficult. Like it just doesn't look that hard when you're looking at it.
Yeah, so
And then
again,
you get on it and it's like, whoo, going back up it is a challenge.
people at OCRWC were also having a lot of trouble with that one. The first version they had during the 3K was very narrow and steep, and then they kind
Oh
of
yeah.
for the 15K they widened it so it was a little bit easier.
Okay. Yeah.
But still, it was can't remember. I feel like this was kind of a cross between the two. I think it was slightly longer than the one they had at World Championships, but not as steep as it was the 3K, but more steep than the 15K.
Okay.
Just my
Yeah.
recollection.
Yeah.
But my favorite obstacle was the second to last one. Can you describe
Yeah. It
that
was
blue
probably my
one?
favorite too.
Yeah.
Does it have a name? I didn't catch if it
It
had a name or
I'm
not.
sure it has a name, but because I haven't seen it anywhere else, I don't know the name.
Okay, so it is it was a bar that you had to traverse across to start. And then this bar is attached to was it a hexagon?
Yeah, I think so.
Metal hexagon that you have to um, basically like pull over. So as you're moving your hands along the hexagon, you are pulling this bar over to the other side so that you can continue to traverse across it.
Yeah, so
And then,
you're going across the same bar twice. So it's
yeah,
facing one way, you get to the hexagon, as you turn it like a wheel, it rotates
yeah,
up towards the sky and then back down, and then you traverse that same bar
yeah.
across
And then
again
there
one
was
more
like,
time.
I think 2 holds after that. And
Yeah.
then you have to ring the bell, of course. Um, I mean, just like, that was so cool. It just was like nothing I had done before. Um, and I will admit I am kind of partial to the it's not like upper body obstacles, but those sort of like swinging, I don't even know.
We'll
What would
call
you
them
classify
technical
those
grip
as?
obstacles, I would say.
Technical grip obstacles. Love
Yeah.
it. I will remember that. I just really like that particular, and that possibly goes back to like my time doing the Ninja Warrior, which we didn't end up talking about, but um, it's definitely more similar to like Ninja Warrior
Yeah.
obstacles in that way. Um, but yeah, I loved that. It was so fun. Like it was like it felt like a puzzle almost.
Yeah.
Like because you're like having to figure out how to turn this thing, and it didn't turn like super easily. Like you had to put some muscle into it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, very challenging, very imaginative. Loved
And
it.
the other one I wanted to point out was I would call it so the old name was Tip of the Spear back in Battle Frog days. It was the two slanted walls with kind of ropes hanging down. You remember that one?
Yes, yes, and
Or
like
they
some of them moved on a track.
Yeah, that's what surprised me. So I've done obstacles like that where there's just ropes hanging down. Like Conquer the
Yeah.
Gauntlet has one called Smooth Criminal that you kind of bound back and forth.
Oh,
Battle Frog used to have one called Tip of the Spear that was very similar to that. And I didn't know that first thing moved. And I got up there and I was like, how the hell am I supposed to get to the next hold? But the
Yeah.
first hole was on a track, and you actually could slide down again, which
Yeah.
was super cool. Definitely inventive.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. It was kind of a surprise at the beginning, like, oh, this is moving. Like you needed it to move, but it was like, oh, yeah, kind of a tricky skill there.
And tell us about the prize you got for winning.
Oh yeah, so I got this really cool banner, this champion banner with a dragon on it, I
Y-
think.
Yeah.
It's on I have it in the other room. Let me look.
Yeah, it's got a dragon on it. I-
Yeah.
I've got
I mean,
one.
it's like I don't even know. It's like 5 feet tall.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's
It's
definitely
really
unique,
big.
unique
Yeah.
prize. They gave the if you want to win a banner, you have to either win the 5K male or female or the 5 hour male or female. And then
Oh,
they
so
also
you did get one as
I did
well.
get one. Yeah, mine's
Yeah.
hanging about 4 feet from me.
Yeah,
And
okay.
they also gave a golden dragon skull, a smaller one for the largest team. And
Oh,
then
that's
for
right.
did you see the fastest team trophy?
Yes, it was massive. A
Preposterously
massive
large.
dragon skull.
If you haven't, it's on my Instagram page. I'm actually currently so my team Strength and Speed won it. So we've been I've passed it off to Jamie and I think she's gonna pass it off to Melina. We're spreading the love around, but
Oh
it
yeah,
is
take turns with it.
preposterously large. It weighs like 30 pounds. It came with a
Oh my
sword
gosh. Yeah, I
and this
didn't try and
wooden
pick it up, but
display.
it looked pretty intense. It has a sword, right?
Yeah,
Did
it
you
has a
just say
sword
that?
too.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Amazing. Yeah,
So if anyone wants to try to win it, make sure you show up in force next year.
that's right.
I
Start
think
getting your teams together now.
I think we're gonna pass it off. I think that's gonna be passed off like the Stanley Cup type
Oh,
thing.
nice. Yes. That makes sense. I
Although
love that.
Will's gonna have a hard time getting the sword back from me. I'm not giving that up. Maybe I'll replace it
Yeah.
with a different sword. I'm
I mean,
telling.
how many times do you win a sword? Like that's hard to give up.
Yeah. So super excited about that. That was a really cool touch. All right. So if anyone wants to run Mythic Race, 2024's race is tentatively scheduled for April 13th. You can find Mythic Race on Facebook, and that'll have all of your updates. They also had some pretty cool swag as far as medals. So for the 5 hour, we got a belt buckle, and for the 5K, got a medal with that Mythic Race dragon head. If anyone wants one of those, for this year, they are doing the same thing they did last year where they offer a virtual challenge and the money goes to Lionhearts Fitness, which I've talked to the Lionhearts Fitness, is a youth OCR group. Let's see, Rachel Waters has talked to them a bunch of times and typically goes down there and helps. I think they're based out of, I want to say, I'm going to mess it up. It's like right on the Tennessee-Georgia border. I can't remember what town it is. Knoxville? No, Knoxville's middle. I don't know. Right on the Tennessee-Georgia border. So Rachel Waters is always going down there helping them out. And they're giving 100% of the profits to Lionheart. So you can head over to Mythic Race and earn yourself some of that swag. All right, let's jump back in time real quick and let's talk about the Ninja Warrior phase.
Yeah.
How did that start? Did you apply for the show? Did you do local competitions, etc.?
Yeah, so it was kind of this like random, I mean, it wasn't totally random. So it was after I had done my first Spartan race and I was like, oh my gosh, I love doing obstacles. I want to do more obstacles. Like the show was, I mean, I think it's still really big, but like we were watching the show at the time and I was like, I want to do stuff like this. These like Ninja Warrior obstacles look like so much fun. And but we were living in Memphis at the time and there were no ninja gyms there. But we were traveling back and forth to Nashville a lot. So there are a couple of ninja gyms in the area. And I got hooked up with one and like went and did some classes and opened some open gyms and just like started playing around on these obstacles. And so I did do some local competitions. I I did pretty well in them. I mean, they're local ninja competitions tend to be pretty small. So there weren't like a ton of women doing these things, but I did manage to like get on the podiums of some local competitions, and I really enjoyed that. I did not ever try to get on the show. I did have some ideas for videos to send in, but I just am like not a like loving the spotlight type of person. So I was like, I think I'll just kind of do this as a fun side thing and leave the TV show for some other people. um, but so I did some local competitions in Nashville, and then I did qualify for, I think it was the UNAA, like World Championships or whatever their championships are.
Hmm.
And that year it was in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, I believe. And so I did like go up for that and got to play on a really cool ninja setup. And didn't do that great at that. So I was like, kind of solidified my like desire to just have that be just a fun kind of side thing. But it's great. It's great training for obstacle course racing, and I just get joy out of it. So I just keep doing it a little bit here and there. But it's definitely not like a main focus.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. If you can do the ninja obstacles or at least train on the ninja obstacles, obstacles going to get more proficient. And typically you won't have problems at OCRs because OCR is concerned about putting a lot of people through the course.
Absolutely.
So they can't be as technical.
Tend to be not super technical. Yeah.
Yeah. And they typically, there's usually not as much padding or crash pads below. So they usually don't have the big dynamic movements that Ninja has. Yeah.
That's very true.
All right. So let's jump a little bit farther back in time. Tell me about like how you got involved in running.
Yeah. So, when I started running, it was a way for me to stay skinny, basically. I struggled a lot with eating disorders throughout my teenage and adult life. And I was like, it was an easy way for me to get exercise in. And it, of course, unlike weightlifting or anything like that, it doesn't put muscle mass on you. So it was a very disordered thing. And even at that time, like I never struggled with like exercise obsession or like that sort of like over exercising type stuff. But it definitely was an important thing to me at the time. And so it's been kind of an interesting progression with my exercise, and then like getting into actual like training as I have gotten healthy. But even when I was struggling with like my eating, I still, I guess I've always been kind of competitive because I was still trying to I think I got into triathlons like in my early 20s, and I was really trying hard to do something competitive, and my body was not really having it.
We've had two really big name OCR female athletes come out and tell the world they had eating disorders, and both of them were extremely high level. And it
is not easy to have good output when you're not feeding yourself properly.
Yeah. But it becomes an interesting thing, right? So like if you lose a couple pounds, a lot of times you get faster.
Yeah.
Then you lose a couple more times, maybe you get a little bit faster. But then it's like going off a cliff where like suddenly you drop off that cliff and now you have major bone breaks. You're not recovering.
Absolutely.
It doesn't last long. So you can
it's a real fine line, and it's not sustainable at all.
It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well.
No, it's not going to end well. I am so thankful that I did not have the injuries that typically come with that.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know how I managed to not, but I'm so thankful for that. I think it was a matter of like I wasn't necessarily trying to be super competitive in what I was doing. Um, at that time, I wasn't, like training on a regular basis. It was more sporadic and just not as intense. And I think that's kind of what saved me from from a lot of injuries. Um,
Any
but
recommendations you'd have or advice you'd have for someone who would be going through something similar?
oh yeah, I mean it's such a like it's just such an interesting thing. Like it's so mental. And people people say like, "Oh, just eat a cheeseburger. Oh, just eat some ice cream. Just eat something." And it's like when you are struggling with that, that's all you want to do is like, "Oh, I wish I could just eat it." But there's so much like mental anguish going on that you can't. And it seems like just to say that it almost sounds silly because you as a healthy person you think, oh yes you can, like you can just eat it, it's not that big of a deal.
Hmm.
But there is such a mental side to it, and that, at least for me, like I had to do so much work with my mental, like with the mental side of things, how I think about food, how I even like how I prepare my food. Like it's just, and food is such an essential part of life that you have to you have to figure it out. You have to deal with it
Hmm.
in some way every day. Um so finding some way to help the mental side of things um is so important. And like really find like digging deep and dealing with those issues and not just trying to push them aside or just get over it, so to
Yeah.
speak. um it's very important.
This does something like that. Does it like do you quote unquote conquer it? Does it go away completely, or is there always like a portion
Yeah, that's
that's kind of nagging at you,
I
but
think
you got it under control type thing?
yeah, so I think it can.
And maybe you're only
I
speaking for
hate to
yourself, but
say, yeah,
yeah.
totally, like I do think it's different for everyone. Of course, everyone is going to recover differently or have different experiences. I do feel like you can conquer it.
Okay.
Um, it is it is a long process, and um, it's interesting though because even now, like so I it's only been like 3 years that
Hmm.
I've been fully recovered and like not doing the behaviors. Um, and it's like, oh gosh, that sounds like so long, but it also sounds so short at the same time. Um, but I definitely still have days where I struggle,
Yeah.
days where I have thoughts creep in. And like, I do think that you can conquer it in a way that like, I don't feel like I'm going to go back to the behaviors that I was doing. But at the same time, like those thoughts are there and I have
Yeah.
to figure out, okay, how am I going to push those thoughts away, think other thoughts, be positive about this and get past it, um, so that I don't go down that deep dark hole and get back to where I was.
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, I think, it's hard to say how I'll feel 10 years from now. I would hope that it would just get less and less the further I get away from it. Um, but where I am right now, like I definitely still have to work at it, but
Hmm.
it's not like uh it's all like it's just an internal battle,
Yeah.
and it gets fewer and more time between the longer that I go. So
Gotcha.
we're getting there.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that information, and hopefully that if anyone's having a similar problem, hopefully that helps, or at least gives them a light at the end of the tunnel, that
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is an end to the tunnel, or at
Yeah.
least the tunnel is
Yeah.
mostly gone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Serious stuff. More serious now. Let's start wrapping it up. We'll hopefully, I'm hoping this next question will make things a little bit lighter. So when we have a guest on our podcast, we like to ask them, tell us something people would be surprised to know about you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll say, um, I have kind of a silly one and then I have more of a serious one. So,
Okay.
um, I wear like, first of all, I love like pajamas. Like I wish I could live in pajamas. I just love being comfortable. But part of that is like the socks that I wear. Like I have like two pairs of socks that I just love to wear all the time. So I just like will wear them for I wear them for way too long. And then I'll wash them and trade them out. And this is the cycle that I go through. I love my comfy socks.
Okay.
So that's kind of silly, but so about 12 or 13 years ago, um, I lived overseas for about a year and a half. I spent about half that time in Germany and half the time in China, in Beijing.
Oh, interesting.
And I feel like, of course, people around me at the time knew that I was doing that, but I have met a lot of people since then, and it just doesn't really come up in casual conversation very often. So whenever somebody does find out, they're like, wow, I had no idea you like lived in a different country. So kind of just one of those things that I did when I was young and younger, um and it was amazing. So I lived in Germany, or I think I already said this, but I lived in Germany for about 6 months, and then and that was sort of a more like backpacking across Europe kind of thing. I like was doing this farm share type thing where I like was working. It was like kind of a farm, but more of like a brewery. Um, and I was just like working in their kitchen, helping and like just like doing chores for them kind of during the week. And then I would have time um, like on the weekends to travel around and visit different cities and stuff. And in the afternoons, there was some amazing, like Germany has these amazing trails going all over the country, like just going from like little town, like through the woods. And I would just like hike for hours. It was amazing and beautiful. And then in China, so I'm a hairstylist, was my career before having kids. And so I found a hair salon in China to work at, and I went over there and did hair and
You speak
traveled around, got
Chinese?
to see, oh gosh, like ni hao is hello. That's about the extent of it. And I think I can count to about three or four.
Okay.
Um, I did try and learn some, and I did get to the point where at that time I could like tell a cab driver where to take me and stuff like that, but that has all been lost. It's a very difficult language.
Yeah.
Um, but it was amazing. I mean, the food, I got to go to the Great Wall a couple times and walk around on it and see the Forbidden City and all the stuff in Beijing. It was very cool. Um, and now I'm like, how did I even do that? It seems crazy, but it was a great experience.
Nice. I usually try to match the guests. So for the clothing one, um, I'm gonna go with something. So the military, I mean, my day job is in the military. So
Uh-huh.
our uniforms. I'm not going to talk about the socks, but I'm talking about the underwear, or rather the lack thereof. So
Oh yeah.
when you're out in the field, there's a term called going commando, which is
Oh yeah.
understandable because it has its basis in military, right? So a lot of times when you're in the field, you don't wear underwear because if your pants get wet, like I do a river crossing and my underwear is wet, the underwear will never dry. So you just don't wear underwear. It's just a single layer. Um,
Okay, so I didn't realize there was a whole reason behind
there's a
it, but
reason,
that makes
yeah.
sense.
So when you're in, we call it garrison, when I'm just working in the office, some people carry that over, some people don't.
Oh, sure.
I will not tell you which category I'm in, but some people carry it over. So I'll just leave it
Yeah.
at that. And then
Yeah.
for the travel one, mid tour, I was when I was in Iraq, mid tour leave, they give you a plane ticket anywhere in the world, and almost everyone goes back to the United States, which is
Mm.
understandable because to see their family. But my last mid tour leave I took, I went to Russia. So this was
Oh wow.
2008, and no smartphones. I literally get off the plane, and I don't speak any Russian. I can read the alphabet slightly because it's very similar to Greek. Cyrillic is very similar to Greek, and it was a high adventure. I mean, I got lost multiple times without a smartphone and just kind of wandering around with my English map and all the signs are in Russian. And kind of like China, I think it's interesting. So when I tell people I went to Russia now, I feel like China and Russia both have a more of an adversarial
Yeah.
view in the United States now than they did when I went.
Yeah,
So
same.
I feel like sometimes I get weird looks when it's like, "Oh, you went to Russia? That's odd."
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I mean, I actually went. I think it was was it a month or 2 months after they invaded Georgia. But I had bought my plane tickets before that, and I was like, "Oh, all right, I guess we're going anyway."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was my traveling, those big trips were also pre-smartphone.
Yeah,
So it was
it's
a
a
little
lot easier with a
different.
smartphone. I'm
Yeah,
much
I get that.
yeah. So all right. Any final shout outs you want to give? Friends, family, sponsors, anything we missed before we get going?
Well, you mentioned before, but I am part of Phoenix Race Pro Team. So they put on great races, and I mentioned some of them earlier. They're mostly in the Southeast, but also Ohio. But you can check them out online, of course. Um, I'm not a sponsored athlete, but I do love my mud gear socks. So
Yes.
I'll give them a shout out, even though I'm not sponsored. They're legit. They're good. I do all my running in them. Um, but I also have to say, I couldn't do any of this without my husband. He's amazing. And, oftentimes, well, we love to go on family race trips where we all race, but oftentimes I'm going solo and I couldn't do that without him being home with the kids. And, it's a lot of sacrificing, but I really appreciate it. And
Nice.
he's amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a similar question. My wife doesn't race, so she's the one who handles the kids a lot of times. So
Yeah, yeah. So my husband will race in open waves, but he's not like real competitive with it. So
gotcha.
it's
Yeah,
fun.
because
We
you
about
mentioned he
once a
did the
year.
Spartan. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So about once a year we get to actually run a race together. So I'll like slow way down and run with him. And it's so much fun. Like because I just am so often like in race mode,
Yeah.
like competitive, like go as fast as you can kind of thing. And it's really fun to slow down with him every once in a while and just kind of play. And we've like done practiced our spear throws at the race and stuff like that I don't usually get to do. So it's great.
Nice. I'm gonna second that plug for Mud Gear. If anyone wants a discount, ultra-ocr man is my discount code. I think that gives you, I don't know, 15% off. I'm not even sure, but
Nice.
it's a, it's kind of the standard code that is available for Mud Gear. So feel free to use that if anyone wants to buy some Mud Gear. Also, you mentioned about being sponsored. I do have a book coming out in as soon as I finish editing it, so I don't know, probably end of the summer, called The Sponsored Athlete, and it talks about how to essentially cut costs and or make money if you cut enough costs with doing
Mm.
things like obstacle course racing or running, or it really can be applied to any hobby. If you want to race cars, like remote control cars or like real cars, like it has applications there too, because it's talking about building your brand and kind of getting getting people on board and saving money that way. So that book's coming out. It'll be on my website, teamstrengthspeed.com. Also will be available digitally from Amazon. The big announcement, which is current as of today, as of recording, Ultra-OCR Man, my documentary filmed by Bobby Ross, it's 24 minutes long. It is now available. So through a website called Gumroad. And if you go to the teamstrengthspeed.com website, you'll see the links. I literally plastered it all over the place. But it's a 24-minute documentary. It costs $10. If you want to support that, that would be much appreciated. The plan is to use the money from that to do some other film projects. One in very much in the spirit of Strength and Speed podcast, but in video format. And the other one would be another charity event, not Ultra OCR charity like I've been doing, because I'm officially done with those. But it would be a different charity, also endurance based. So please head over and check that out. 24 minutes long. And Bobby put a lot of work into it, and I mostly just suffered on the race course for it. So please check that out. And even if you don't buy it or watch it, please share it around. I would appreciate that. And then finally, teamstrengthspeed.com, the online store, leg mitts, all sizes, small, medium, large, extreme, light, available there. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for coming on, Cindy.
Thanks for having me.